Chapter 24, V-109. When the German army barge struck the bridge cutwaters, the boat splintered. The rush of water sent the remains crashing up and over the bridge parapet. The damage from the 6-pound guns had had no real effect, but where mankind's savagery had failed, nature's would not. The crush of water and debris exploded the spandrel walls, parapets, and roadway. The arches and cutwaters collapsed and were dragged and tumbled downstream like toys kicked by some giant child in a temper fit. It grabbed the stone foundations and tore them out of the mud. Within moments, it was as though Napoleon's masons and labourers had never composed the perfect symmetry of the span. It might as well never have been. General Verus watched in awe as the flood dismantled the bridge. His horse danced back, terrified, and he yanked the reins, pulling him all the way around in time to see the road leading to the bridge, its foundations undermined by the sudden current, collapsing into the wash. Panicked, with his entire army now at his back, Verus shrieked at Oberon Junius, "Turn them! Turn them!" Oberon Junius bellowed for the men to come about, and his sergeants echoed the cry over the water's roar, but Verus could not contain himself. He turned the gelding and kicked his flanks, charging through his men, turning what might have been an orderly retreat into chaos and confusion. Oberon watched Verus disappear, racing his horse over and through his own men. He shook his head, disgusted. He looked back across the canal and saw the metal turtle, half submerged, going under. Suddenly it found purchase, driving backward and ploughing up and out of the canal. He watched it disappear over the ridge. It may not be this night, but we'll run you down soon enough, and metal turtle or no, we'll bring you low, Oberon thought. Yes, indeed. He turned back to his army, for the truth was these men belonged to him and always had. There would always be Caesars bestriding the world with their grand schemes, but when it came to turning those schemes into reality, it was the men on the ground who counted, the reliable workmen who made things happen, not the grand men whose whims set the horror shows in motion. He hollered out to his sergeants, and in short order had his army turned away from the flood. They fell into crisp marching order and began a steady tramp out of St. Quentin. Oberon ordered 2 squadrons out of the column and sent them scurrying east and west in search of a crossing. He knew well that the scope of the force would now become a hindrance. Once a juggernaut this size began to roll, it was difficult to turn. Plans had to be made, decisions set in stone, then action could be called for. Until then, patience, as painful as it was everything. Holy crow! James Cox reached down and grabbed Donnie's hand. "Come on, Donnie, we're going to be okay. There's a boat waiting for us," he said. James and Rupert helped Donnie to his feet. Lightning stuttered, illuminating Adolf in the shadows behind Donnie, shaking and uncertain. "Hey," James said. "What do you know? You're that blind fella." He looked back at Donnie. "Did y'all see anybody else on the way?" Donnie shook his head. "No. Didn't see no one else." Durant, Wolfgang, Jonah, and Renoir came round the corner, running through the downpour. They pulled up short when they saw Donnie and Adolf. In the distance, the Lewis gun started barking again, Durant guessed it could not be more than 400 or 500 yards away. "What's happening back there?" Durant asked Donnie. Donnie stammered. I don't know. I don't know what's happening back that way. There's a big truck with guns. That's all I know, I swear." Durant sensed there was more to the story, but there was no time. "Let's go," he said. Then he was leading the way through the flooded street toward the canal. Lightning cracked, revealing the last 100 yards, and Durant saw the water from the avenue pouring over the mule path into the overflowing canal. Not far now, not far. Adam Gillet watched from the shadows as Adolf ran onward with the band of living men. As they gathered and ran toward the canal, with Donnie and Adolf in their midst, Adam limped after them. He cursed his luck. He did not see a way to get to Adolf without killing the others or being cut down by them. But as long as he killed Adolf, it did not matter what became of him. He would find the moment to make his strike, and come what may. He gave up hope of seeing Francois again. Adolf's murder was all the farewell present he could hope to give. Darren Tremaine knew he was dying. Bathsheba had slowed to a steady canter. Every step she took racked his body with pain. Nausea flooded through him. He looked at his blood-soaked belly and saw the spearhead poking out. 3 feet of shaft was sticking out of his back. He vomited, then he blacked out and slid from the saddle, splashing into the melted slush. His blood flowed with the water down the gentle grade and into the canal. Bathsheba stood over Darren until the German shepherds found them. She stamped and danced away as they growled and barked at her, then she turned, her hooves clopping away into the night, before little boy Halstead, Harlan, Daddy Cox, Sheriff Coombs, and Big Don McMaster joined the dogs. Halstead twisted his spear out of Darren and shook the blood off it, letting the rain wash the remainders away. "Well, shit," said Daddy Cox. "Was hoping we could add this one to our gallows, too, but he is door-nailed dead. Shame." "He gonna wake up?" Sheriff Coombs asked Halstead. Halstead bent down. He rolled Darren's body over. The cavalryman had passed, that was certain. His eyes were open and rolled back, jaw slack, face shining pale white when lightning flashed. But there was no sign the vessel would fill and rise again. The Lewis gun, raging in the distance, cut through the night. "Well, boys," Daddy laughed, "maybe the hanging party ain't over just yet after all." "No," said little boy Halstead. "It has only just begun." He stood and led the way. Durant reached the rushing canal first. The black, 100-foot-long V-109 barge sat low in the water. The sluice flowed past, splashing up onto her deck. The mule path was already submerged. They had to fight through the canal's knee-deep current to cover the last 40 yards to the bow of the boat. The barge strained at the taut ropes cleating it to the dock. Durant grabbed the bowsprit and pulled himself onto the deck. Wolfgang followed. Then he and Durant helped Rupert, Jonah, James, Donnie, Renoir, and Adolf up after them. Durant turned to Wolfgang. "Get the engine running. I'll release the bow line." Wolfgang nodded. They heard staccato rifle fire downstream. "Whatever this is," said Wolfgang, "once we are underway, we will be traveling straight toward it." "How long?" Wolfgang asked. "What do you mean?" said Durant. "How long do we give the cavalrymen?" Durant stared into the night for a long moment. "Get the boiler lit. Once we got steam, we're cutting loose. We'll give them until then." Durant jumped back off the deck, sloshing through the water to the bow. He followed the line down to a concrete dock, submerged under 3 feet of black floodwater. Wolfgang grabbed Rupert. "Can you get the boiler lit?" "Yeah," Rupert replied. "Go." Rupert headed for the rear of the boat and raised the cockpit, and the raised cockpit that sat beyond midships. Wolfgang saw the little sapper flashlight that hung from Rupert's neck light up as he pulled the chain. Then the light disappeared down into the darkened galley, its dull glow vanishing into the belly of the boat. As Rupert headed for the engine room, Wolfgang turned to Jonah, checked the machine guns at fore and aft, sees that they are functional. "Yeah, Captain," Jonah Unger said. He headed for the MG-08 that was bolted to the deck at the front of the boat. Adolf started after Rupert toward the cover of the galley, but Wolfgang grabbed him. "No, he can manage it. Give me your bayonet." Wolfgang held out his hand. Adolf's look of anger at the request was lit by a burst of lightning. He shied away from Wolfgang's touch. "Corporal, your bayonet," Wolfgang repeated. Whatever resistance Adolf felt, he choked down. He held out the bayonet the dead Romans had pressed into his hand, and Wolfgang took it. "Help Corporal Unger with the MGs," Wolfgang said. Adolf chafed under the command. He wanted his bayonet back. He wanted to get out of the rain below decks with Rupert Fuchs. He wanted to kill Wolfgang and Jonah Unger and all the rest of them. But he bowed under Wolfgang's gaze and silently followed Jonah up to the front gun. Wolfgang looked at the 2 Americans, James and Donnie. What do you want us to do?" asked James Cox. "You keep watch at the front." Wolfgang looked at Donnie, standing soaked and forlorn next to James. "You," Donnie looked up. "You keep watch at the rear. Call out if you see anything coming." James patted Donnie's shoulder in what he hoped was a reassuring fashion. Then he went forward over the slick black deck and stood behind Adolf and Jonah Unger, who had already begun an appraisal of the machine gun's working order. Donnie hesitated, then limped past Wolfgang toward the stern, staring back into the pitch-black rain. The dead men were coming. When they caught him again, they would not hesitate to punish him for his failure. He felt certain of one thing: his own doom. Wolfgang looked at Renoir. For a second, he saw his brother's death through Renoir's eyes again. Sebastian's head, skull, splintering from the sniper shot, the pink spray of misted brains and blood, the collapse of dead muscle and bones, useless organs and fat, wrapped snugly in German field grey wool. He felt his body hum at the image. Then he tucked it away again. Now was not the time. "I would cut the breast lines from bow to stern. You get the stern warp line ready to cast off," Wolfgang said. Renoir nodded. "Oui." Wolfgang headed for midships and jumped down into the thigh-deep water on the mule path, while Renoir followed Donnie toward the stern, searching out the rearmost warp line. At the bow of the boat, Durant strained the rope that held the V-109 in a tight embrace to the foremost steel cleat. The wet rope was impossible to move. It had been tied off loosely when the water was a foot below the mule path, but with the flood of rain and melted snow pushing the water 4 feet higher, it was now taut as a steel cable. The cleat hitch knot itself was pulled mercilessly tight. Behind him, Wolfgang found the first of 3 breast lines that cinched the middle of the boat to the dock. He felt his way down until he found the cleat, but just as Durant had, he saw that pulling the knot free was an impossible task. "It's no good," Durant yelled over the downpour. "We have to cut them loose." "Yeah, I understand. I would cut the breast lines first." "Right," Durant replied. Wolfgang set the serrated edge of Adolf's bayonet against the wet rope and began sawing. The strands began to fall away, and in half a minute the breast line's final threads tore apart. He fought the current, splashing through it until he reached the stay rope at midships. He cut into it as quickly as he could, sawing away at rigid, wet hemp. At the rear of the boat, Donnie knelt by the stern machine gun, staring into the night, not really seeing anything but his own impending murder, certain he was helpless to stop it. Renoir joined Donnie and found the stern line running from the boat to its dock cleat. He slid past Donnie and hopped onto the flooded dock, following the rope down. It led him underwater. He tried to keep his face out of the black canal flow, but could not reach the rope's tail. He ducked under for half a second, but the memory of drowning was like an electrified fence, and it sent him back up, hyperventilating. He worked to calm himself. He was not buried under rocks. He was not travelling in memory to the murder of his prostitutes and the revenge he had taken for them. He had a simple task to accomplish that might save his life. He breathed deep and submerged, blind in the darkness, feeling desperately for the rope that would set them free. Wolfgang felt the midship breast line split. He pushed through the rising water to the last breast line and cut into it. In the distance, louder than thunder, the sound of the 6-pound artillery guns in the tank, firing point blank, echoed up the canal to them. Wolfgang redoubled his efforts, leaning forward, putting all his weight into driving the blade of the bayonet through the rope that had them trapped on the dock.